Marcus Carter, a skilled FBI agent, decided to spend his rare vacation driving through peaceful small towns he rarely had a chance to visit. Dressed in a simple black t-shirt and worn jeans, he blended in effortlessly, keeping his low profile as he always did, concealing his esteemed position within the FBI. Driving his black SUV, Marcus turned onto a quiet street in Greenridge, a quaint town with only a handful of small shops and diners lining the road. He stopped at a convenience store to grab a bottle of water and some snacks. Inside, the atmosphere was calm, with a young cashier and a few scattered customers browsing the aisles. As Marcus approached the checkout counter, Officer Bill Harper, a middle-aged local policeman with a rough demeanor and sharp eyes, walked into the store. Harper, a seasoned officer in the town, immediately noticed Marcus. His ingrained prejudices flared as he eyed Marcus suspiciously, focusing solely on the fact that Marcus was a black man. Harper lingered in the store, pretending to browse while discreetly watching Marcus. When Marcus left the counter and exited the store, Harper followed him outside. "Hey, you! Stop right there!" Harper barked authoritatively. Marcus turned, surprised by the sudden confrontation. "Is there a problem, officer?" he asked calmly. "I saw you acting suspicious in the store. What were you doing in there? Did you take something without paying?" Harper questioned, his tone laced with accusation. Marcus frowned. "I don't understand what you're implying. I just bought a bottle of water and some snacks. You're welcome to check my receipt." But Harper dismissed his response, stepping closer and resting a hand on the holster of his gun. "I don't need your explanations. Put your hands behind your back. Now." Passers-by began to notice the escalating situation. A few stopped to observe, some pulling out their phones to record. Marcus, still calm on the surface, recognized the brewing danger of the situation. "Officer, I've done nothing wrong. You're overstepping your authority," Marcus said firmly, but Harper cut him off. Without allowing further explanation, Harper roughly shoved Marcus against his SUV, forcibly handcuffing him. Marcus felt the sting of Harper's prejudice and the physical pain from the unnecessary force. The growing crowd, a mix of shock and curiosity, watched as Harper's actions unfolded, while Marcus silently braced himself for the challenges this situation would bring. The small crowd outside the convenience store grew restless. A nearby woman shouted, "Why is he being arrested? He didn't do anything." Harper ignored her, raising his voice to assert dominance. "This man was acting suspiciously. I'm just doing my job." Meanwhile, Marcus chose not to resist. He understood that any move he made could easily be misinterpreted. "I'll comply, but you should know I have the right to file a complaint," Marcus said calmly, his tone carrying an uncommon patience. Harper smirked and shot back. "A complaint? To who? You think someone like you will be believed?" The words hit Marcus's pride like a blow, but he suppressed his emotions and stayed silent. Suddenly, Harper shoved Marcus forcefully to the ground. A completely unnecessary, threatening act. Marcus winced as his knee hit the pavement. At that moment, a man from the crowd stepped forward, trying to intervene. "Hey, officer, you're crossing the line. I've recorded everything." Harper spun around, glaring at the man. "Get lost. This is police business, not yours," he barked. But the intervention only emboldened the growing crowd. More people gathered, asking questions, recording the incident, and voicing their disapproval. Marcus was shoved into the police car and driven to the station while Harper continued muttering venomous remarks under his breath, oblivious to the fact that his actions were now under intense scrutiny from the crowd. At the police station, Marcus was treated like a criminal. Harper placed him in the interrogation room without allowing him to make a phone call or speak to a lawyer. Marcus knew this was a violation of his rights, but he chose to see how far Harper would take it. Meanwhile, at the FBI headquarters, Marcus's colleagues began to grow concerned when they couldn't reach him. Known for his meticulous nature, Marcus always informed someone if he planned to be away. Realizing that Marcus was missing, the department head immediately contacted the local police. Soon after, an FBI agent from Washington arrived at the Greenridge police station. Harper was stunned when he saw the federal agent walk in. The agent demanded to see the detainee immediately. "Do you even know who you just arrested?" the agent asked Harper, his tone icy. Harper looked confused. "I arrested a suspect. He was acting suspiciously." The agent let out a sharp laugh. "That suspect is Marcus Carter, a senior FBI agent. And congratulations, you've just made the biggest mistake of your career." News of the incident spread rapidly as a bystander's video was uploaded to social media, the footage showing Marcus being shoved to the ground, handcuffed, and verbally humiliated by Harper ignited outrage online. The hashtag Justice for Marcus trended widely, calling for an investigation into racial discrimination within the Greenridge police force. Human rights organizations spoke out strongly, organizing protests outside the police station. Harper found himself at the center of criticism but stubbornly defended his actions. Marcus was immediately released after FBI intervention, but he didn't rush to retaliate. Instead, he chose to share his story through the media, speaking with poise and emotion, without bitterness. He emphasized, "This isn't just my story. This is the story of millions who have endured injustice in silence." Marcus's calm and articulate approach earned nationwide respect. While Harper became increasingly isolated, his superiors began to feel the mounting public pressure, forcing them to launch an internal investigation. The fight for justice was just beginning. Marcus was determined to expose not just Harper's actions but the entire system of injustice behind him. "I'm not fighting just for myself. I'm fighting for those without a voice," Marcus declared. The media storm following Marcus's case turned the Greenridge police force into a national focal point. Under intense public pressure, the local government was forced to launch an internal investigation into Officer Harper and his colleagues. However, from the outset, Marcus recognized that this was not just a pursuit of justice but also a systemic effort to protect itself. Harper continued to defend his actions, citing the pretext of ensuring community safety. In an internal meeting with department leadership, he made blatantly prejudiced statements. "People like him, sneaky-looking like that, clearly can't be trusted," Harper insisted, attempting to justify his behavior. But the bystander video told the whole story. Additionally, eyewitnesses at the scene were ready to testify that Harper had no valid reason to approach or use force against Marcus. Meanwhile, the FBI took a direct role in the case. A federal investigative team was dispatched to Greenridge to collaborate on uncovering the truth. While Marcus did not participate in the investigation directly, he provided detailed accounts of Harper's behavior during his detention. Special Agent Sarah Whitmore, who led the investigation, quickly realized that Harper was not just a bad apple. By reviewing Harper's records, her team uncovered a pattern of complaints against him for similar misconduct. However, these complaints had all been conveniently swept under the rug due to protection from his superiors. As the investigation progressed, Marcus refused to remain idle. He attended community gatherings where he listened to heartbreaking stories from others who had been victims of injustice. An elderly woman shared her experience. "My son was arrested for no reason while walking home one night. They beat him and threw him in jail without cause." Marcus felt his heart sink. He realized that his ordeal was merely the tip of a much deeper and systemic problem. On a quiet evening after returning from a community gathering, Marcus sat alone in his small hotel room. Memories from his childhood began to flood back. He recalled being just 12 years old when his family moved into a predominantly white neighborhood. There, he and his younger sister were constantly bullied, called slurs, and ostracized simply because of the color of their skin. "Marcus, always remember to keep your head high. No one has the right to make you feel inferior," his mother used to say. Those words became a guiding principle for him, helping him push through every challenge. Marcus never forgot the injustices he faced, but he refused to let them defeat him. He worked hard, graduated at the top of his class from the police academy, and was recruited directly into the FBI for his exceptional skills. Yet, even within the FBI, Marcus wasn't immune to prejudice. Some of his white colleagues still cast doubting glances his way, their biases lingering, even in what was supposed to be a professional and meritocratic environment. As the FBI delved deeper into the investigation, they uncovered that Harper and a small group within the Greenridge Police Department had been regularly engaging in human rights violations. Harper's actions extended beyond racial discrimination. He was also linked to a corruption ring, accepting bribes from local businesses in exchange for ignoring violations. Sarah Whitmore called an emergency meeting with the investigative team. "We're not just dealing with one bad individual. This is a deeply corrupt system, and we need to expose the whole truth." As news of the investigation began to leak, Harper and his allies panicked. Some officers in the department attempted to intimidate witnesses and destroy evidence. Using his experience, Marcus warned the FBI team, "They'll do whatever it takes to cover this up. Don't underestimate them." Sure enough, one night as Marcus was driving back to his hotel, a truck suddenly veered straight toward him. Fortunately, with his defensive training, Marcus managed to avoid the collision. He knew this was a warning from Harper and his accomplices. The attack on Marcus only fueled the outrage of the local community. Human rights organizations, activists, and residents of the town organized large protests outside the police department, demanding that Harper and his team be fired and prosecuted. Images of Marcus standing amidst the crowd, calm yet resolute, became a symbol of the fight against injustice. Addressing hundreds of people, he said, "This is not just my battle. This is a fight for all of us. We will not let fear silence the truth." Marcus's story spread nationwide, inspiring others to share similar experiences of injustice. This sparked a wave of calls for systemic police reform across the country. As the pressure mounted, Harper began to unravel, realizing he had no way out. He was summoned by the FBI for questioning. Under scrutiny, Harper was forced to admit to a portion of his crimes. Despite being the victim, Marcus remained composed. He understood that this was only the beginning of justice. The road ahead was long, but at last, the truth was beginning to surface. While Harper's actions ignited a public outcry, his family was plunged into turmoil as well. His wife, Linda Harper, who had long endured his abrasive and authoritarian demeanor, found herself unable to stand by him any longer as the scandal unfolded. "Bill, you can't honestly believe you're in the right here," Linda said during a tense dinner. "You attacked an innocent man. You didn't even have any evidence." Harper slammed his hand on the table, his voice rising. "You don't understand. Men like him are always a threat. What I did was to protect this town." But Linda had reached her breaking point. Their eldest son, Tyler, a college student, also voiced his anger. "Father, you always taught me to respect the law and justice, but you're the one breaking those principles. You're destroying everything." Tyler's words struck a nerve in Harper, but instead of reflecting, he grew even angrier, blaming everyone but himself for the fallout. Linda realized that staying by Harper's side would only drag her and their children into the storm of societal condemnation. After many sleepless nights, she made the decision to leave with her children, walking away from Harper and their once proud home. As Linda closed the door behind her, Harper felt the crushing weight of isolation for the first time in his life. Alone in the now empty, cold house, he turned to drinking every night in a futile attempt to escape reality. But the relentless sound of protesters banging on his door reminded him that there was no running from the consequences of his actions. At the Greenridge Police Department, the leadership began to feel immense pressure from all sides. Harper's superiors, who had grown accustomed to sweeping minor infractions under the rug, now found themselves grappling with a scandal far beyond their control. A closed-door meeting was convened, Chief of Police Frank Donovan anxiously scanned the room. This situation can't drag on any longer. We need to do something to defuse public outrage. One senior officer suggested. We could propose a deal with the FBI, offer a reduced sentence for Harper if he agrees to plead guilty. But others voiced their objections. If Harper pleads guilty, it'll open the door to further investigations. It could expose things we've worked hard to keep buried, said a voice laced with fear. Meanwhile, the FBI ramped up the pressure. Special Agent Sarah Whitmore, unflinching and assertive, delivered a blunt warning to the police leadership. If you don't cooperate, the FBI will launch a full-scale investigation into every operation this department has conducted over the past decade. We already have enough evidence to prove that Harper didn't act alone, Sarah stated firmly. If you want to prevent the entire department from collapsing, start cooperating now. Her words cut through the stifling tension like a knife. The leadership realized they had no choice but to sacrifice Harper to protect themselves and the department. Harper, now isolated both at home and at work, began to spiral out of control. Realizing he was being made the scapegoat, he decided to launch one final desperate plan to save himself. He reached out to a handful of loyal colleagues, individuals who had been complicit in his previous misconduct. Together, they conspired to fabricate evidence to tarnish Marcus's reputation. Harper even hired a hacker to breach Marcus's personal records, hoping to unearth any past indiscretions that could be used as leverage. However, Marcus was no easy target. Leveraging his extensive network within the FBI, he quickly uncovered Harper's plot. We're not just dealing with one man, we're up against an entire system trying to protect itself, Marcus told Sarah during a confidential meeting. Sarah nodded resolutely. We need to take bold action to turn the tide. If they want to play dirty, we'll show them that the truth is stronger than any lie. Marcus and the FBI team devised a counter-strategy. Using advanced technology, they tracked and exposed every communication between Harper and his accomplices. A trove of undeniable evidence was presented to the court, revealing that Harper had not only targeted Marcus but was also implicated in a web of corruption and criminal cover-ups. Cornered and out of options, one of Harper's allies flipped, agreeing to cooperate with the FBI in exchange for a reduced sentence. Harper was summoned to court, where he faced a barrage of charges. Marcus, appearing as the key witness, maintained a calm and professional demeanor, refusing to let anger dictate his actions. When asked if he had any message for Harper, Marcus simply stated, "I am not here for revenge. I am here to seek justice, not just for myself, but for every other victim." Under the weight of overwhelming evidence and public scrutiny, Harper eventually had no choice but to confess. In a rare moment of vulnerability, he admitted before the court, "I was wrong. I let hatred and prejudice dictate my actions. I do not deserve to wear this uniform." Harper's confession left the courtroom in stunned silence. Though it came too late, it was the first time he truly faced the consequences of his actions. As the trial concluded, Marcus stepped out of the courthouse to the sound of applause from the crowd gathered outside. Many embraced him, expressing gratitude for his courage to fight not only for himself but for the entire community. "This battle doesn't end here," Marcus said. "It's only the beginning, but I believe that if we stand together, the truth will always prevail." The trial of Officer Harper was not only a turning point for Marcus but also a historic event for the local community of Greenridge. When the judge declared Harper guilty on all charges, including abuse of power, racial discrimination, and the intentional assault of an innocent man, the courtroom erupted in cheers. Outside the courthouse, the crowd that had gathered for hours to await the verdict raised their signs high and chanted slogans demanding justice. Marcus, sitting quietly in the front row, felt a tremendous weight lifted from his shoulders. Yet deep down, he understood that this was only the beginning. While Harper was being held accountable for his actions, the system that had enabled such behavior needed fundamental reform. After the trial, Marcus was immediately approached by the media for interviews. One reporter asked, "Do you believe Harper's conviction is enough to address racial discrimination within the police force?" Marcus responded with a calm but powerful voice. "No, this is not the end. This is a signal that justice can be achieved if we persist in our fight. But to reform a system takes more than one trial. It requires accountability, transparency, and real change." Marcus's words quickly went viral, making him a national symbol in the fight against racial injustice and abuse of power. Greenridge, once a quiet and overlooked small town, had now become a beacon of unity. Residents, young and old alike, began participating in workshops, community meetings, and educational programs aimed at raising awareness about equality and civic responsibility. Although Marcus no longer stayed in Greenridge for long, he played a pivotal role in organizing talks with human rights organizations and social activists. At a large community gathering in the local church, Marcus stepped up to the podium, facing hundreds of expectant eyes, and said, "We cannot change the past, but we can shape the future. Each of us has a responsibility to build a community where everyone, regardless of skin color, is treated with fairness and respect." His words brought the room to life with resounding applause. Many locals shared their own painful experiences with law enforcement, while also expressing hope that things could truly change from this point forward. Marcus also visited schools in the town, speaking to students about the importance of standing up against injustice. He recounted his journey, from being a young black boy enduring prejudice to becoming an FBI special agent. For the students, seeing someone like Marcus was a source of immense inspiration and hope. After everything that had happened, Marcus took time to reflect on himself. He realized that the events hadn't just transformed the community, they had also transformed him. Once someone who kept his emotions tightly guarded, Marcus was now willing to share more, not only to defend justice but also to inspire others. He returned to his childhood home, a place filled with memories both joyful and painful. There, he reunited with his mother, Evelyn, a former human rights activist. Evelyn, with her silver hair and gentle smile, looked at her son with pride. "Marcus, I've always believed you were destined for great things. But what I'm most proud of is that you've kept your heart intact, even when the world tried to break it." The two talked for hours, reminiscing about stories from Marcus's childhood. He shared with his mother his plans to write a book about his experiences, not just to tell his story but to encourage others to stand up for their rights. Evelyn smiled warmly. "That's the best way to keep fighting. A single story can change an entire generation." Marcus's story quickly became the spark that ignited a nationwide movement calling for police reform. Human rights organizations and politicians began demanding widespread investigations into abuses of power and racial discrimination within police forces across multiple states. Marcus received invitations from universities, international forums, and even congressional hearings in Washington, D.C. At each event, he emphasized, "We don't need to destroy the system, we need to rebuild it, founded on fairness and transparency." In major cities like New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago, thousands of people marched in the streets with slogans like #JusticeForMarcus and #ReformTheSystem. Lawmakers started drafting legislation aimed at reform, including mandates for independent oversight of police actions and enhanced anti-racism training. Though exhausted from the long journey, Marcus felt a glimmer of hope for the first time. One night, as he sat by his window, gazing at the starry sky, he reflected on everything he had endured. He knew that justice was rarely easy to achieve, but with unity and determination, anything was possible. "This journey isn't the end," Marcus told himself. "It's just the beginning of something far greater." With unwavering determination, Marcus continued his mission not just as an FBI agent, but as a symbol of hope, unity, and the enduring power of justice. After being sentenced, Harper was transferred to a prison designated for inmates with prior convictions related to abuse of power. in an environment stripped of the privileges of his uniform. He quickly realized the lowly position he now occupied. The other inmates, well aware of Harper's background, constantly taunted and humiliated him. Harper began to sink into isolation. He had no one left to lean on. His family had abandoned him. His colleagues had turned their backs. And the pride he once took in his job had turned into a profound shame. During the long nights in his cell, Harper started reflecting on his life. He recalled his early days as a police officer, when he had carried ideals of protecting and serving. But over the years, working within a corrupt system, embracing racial prejudices, and wielding unchecked power had gradually transformed him into someone he could no longer recognize. One morning, Harper stared at himself in the small mirror of his prison cell. His aged face, dark circles under his eyes, reflected a deep regret he had never thought he would feel. "I was wrong," Harper muttered, admitting it to himself for the first time. When Marcus learned that Harper had begun showing remorse in prison, he received a letter from him. In the letter, Harper wrote, "Marcus, I don't expect you to forgive me. What I did was wrong, and I will pay the price for it. But I want you to know that I've come to realize the toxicity of my thoughts and actions. I hope that, even just a little, I can learn from you how to become a better person." Harper. Reading these words, Marcus felt a heaviness in his heart. He understood that Harper wasn't just an inherently bad person, but a product of a broken system that had fostered such beliefs. Marcus decided not to let hatred linger within him. In a national television interview, when asked if he harbored resentment toward Harper, Marcus responded, "I don't hate him. Hatred only drains us. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. He must be held accountable for what he did. And I hope his remorse is genuine." Marcus wrote a brief but meaningful reply to Harper. "Harper, forgiveness is a long road, but the first step is recognizing your mistakes. I hope you continue on that journey." Marcus. The events in Greenridge became a catalyst for state and national governments to implement sweeping reforms in the policing system. One of the first changes was the establishment of an independent oversight committee comprising human rights activists, lawyers, and community members. This committee was granted the authority to investigate and address complaints of police misconduct without being influenced by internal pressures. New training programs were also introduced, focusing on conflict resolution skills, reducing bias, and fostering cultural understanding. Marcus was invited to serve as an advisor for these programs, helping to design courses based on his own experiences. At a workshop in Washington, Marcus stood before hundreds of young police officers and said, "As police officers, you wield great power, but that power lies not in controlling others, but in your ability to protect them, even when they are different from you. Remember, a strong community is built on trust, not fear." Marcus's words were more than just a lecture. They were a call to action for the young officers, many of whom were hearing such perspectives for the first time. It was a profound reminder of the immense responsibility they carried. A year after the incident, Greenridge had transformed into a different town. Gone were the wary glances from people of color when they saw police patrols. Instead, they felt protected, not threatened. Regular meetings between the police and local residents became common events, fostering trust and mutual understanding. Marcus, after his tireless efforts, decided to take some time for himself. He completed his book recounting his story, titled The Road to Justice. The book quickly became a bestseller, not only for its moving narrative but also for the inspiring message it carried. In the final pages, Marcus wrote, "I am not a hero. I am just an ordinary person who decided not to remain silent in the face of injustice. And I believe that if each of us stands up for what is right, this world can change." During a book signing event in New York, a young black girl approached Marcus, her eyes sparkling with admiration. She said, "I want to be like you when I grow up." Marcus knelt down and smiled. "You don't need to be anyone but yourself. Just believe in what's right and never give up. As Marcus left the event, stepping into the bustling city streets, he watched the hurried crowd passing by. The world was still full of injustices, but he knew that every small action, every story like his, was a building block for a better future. With that belief, Marcus continued his journey, a journey with no end, but one filled with purpose.